Hey everyone, welcome to the Pawareness podcast, and thanks for joining me. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube, and also check us out at pawareness.org and on Instagram at pawareness_official. On Instagram, we are doing submissions for Pet of the Week, where you can submit your foster pet, and we'll pick one winner every month, and we'll give $200 to their choice of charity or foster. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy this episode.
Hey everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Pawareness podcast. Today I am speaking with Jacquie Navratil, the founder of Luxe Paws, and I'm going to go ahead and let you introduce yourself, a little bit about you, the organization. Let's get into it. I'm excited. Let's talk.
Hey Chris, how are you? Thank you so much. I am just the person that got this rolling. I saw a void. I decided that it was important to fill it. And again, Luxe Paws is just a very tiny team of part-time volunteers. We're over here in Los Angeles in a little corner, Los Feliz, Silver Lake Echo Park. Most people know our neighborhood because of Dodger Stadium, and we're close to downtown. And I really had no idea how bad the problem was until we kind of cobbled together as a region and started saying, let's support our shelters by fixing cats so that they aren't breeding out of control. And so that's what we do. Our very first year, we helped about 67 kitties. And now on average, we're helping, last year during COVID, we helped about 1,700, which in 1 year, which really goes to show you the problem, shocking to even me, is so much worse than we think. So that's what we do. You know, we're trying to really attack it from the ground, on the ground, by trapping and fixing these kitties so that we don't have all these babies born out there.
And what were some things that happened in order for you to go from, what'd you say, 67 that first year to over 1,700? What were some things that you had that were successful that led to that growth, I guess? Was it community, relationships? What's that like?
Well, I started in a little bit of a different fashion. Instead of going to pet stores, luckily, we started this as a neighborhood group. And so we partner with small businesses primarily. We did start with a local pet store, but we started infiltrating the community, so to speak. So we were hitting bookshops, we were hitting cafes. We were trying to really draw awareness to the problem, because most people are like, where do all those kittens in the shelter come from? You know, why are rescues every year? We're overwhelmed. And so just to try to bring this to the public as a whole, not just people who have a cat or a dog, but all of our neighbors, we tried to partner with different businesses. We used Nextdoor. We used a lot of small community forums, and we just did old-fashioned setting up a table, doing bake sales, selling cookies, saying, hey, we're out trapping and fixing cats. Do you know where there's some strays? And that community engagement is what got us off the ground. The hardest part was really the resources to fix the cats. There were plenty of kitties here. Unfortunately, finding spay neuter without paying $200, $300, $400, $500, $600 per cat, that was probably the toughest part. And it still is a big challenge for anyone who gets involved in trap, neuter, return, or just trying to help neighbors fix their pet cats. There's just not enough spay neuter for the amount of animals who need it.
Exactly. And what does that process look like in terms of, finding the cat? Do you get calls? Is it businesses that are calling you? What does that whole streamlined process look like?
Everything. We were really late in the game. We've only had our website going for a few years. We started primarily on Facebook. We jumped to Instagram. And then again, we tried to infiltrate all of the community online social media groups. One good example of our success, a lot of older people are shut in, so to speak. And we just started posting, hey, we're trapping and, we're trying to reduce the number of unwanted kittens. We're here in these neighborhoods. If you see cats, let us know where. And boom, it was like one Memorial Day weekend. A girl went to a deck party at somebody's house, walked over with her drink, looked into this neighboring backyard, and there were 30 cats. And this is in a very wealthy corner of Silver Lake. trendy. It was an old woman, and she needed help desperately. And, there was no one coming to her. And so because this young lady went to this party and saw it, she connected us with the lady, and boom, we were able to get dozens of kittens out and adopted, fixed all the cats. The woman, it was a game changer for this old woman because she just didn't know where to turn. So that kind of community engagement and, really boots on the ground is what has led to our success. People telling, just one neighbor telling another.
And what are some of the bottlenecks you face in this type of rescue business? Is it equipment? Is it time? Is it volunteers? I know you mentioned you're a small organization. What are some of the resources that you could use more of from your perspective?
I think what's hard for people in TNR to understand, I have a lot of sympathy for people in different situations across the country when it comes to TNR. What's tough for us in certain areas, I think in the past, trap, neuter, return has been a suburban thing. In the inner city, dense urban areas, it's tough. It's not uncommon for there to be no place for a trapper to park. We're parking in a red zone and hauling traps down the street. Flashers on, pray we don't get a $400 ticket. Access is difficult. Apartment buildings, cats are behind. So it really depends on where you're trapping in terms of the need. Another tough thing that I feel for people who get into TNR, obviously having access to free spay neuter. Free spay neuter is not a handout. It's a lifesaver. So to be able to provide people who are interested in either helping a neighbor fix their pet cats or, trapping and spaying and neutering strays, you got to have some place for free. You'd go broke paying for this. And it is a community service. But the second part of it is sometimes, how are you going to transport those cats? Do you have a place to hold them? Some folks are spending $2,000 a month for a studio apartment, and they can only stack 3 traps up in their bathtub. So the need is so dire, and I feel like there are ways, but I feel like trying to get free spay neuter clinics set up where people could maybe drop cats off at night, so they don't have to hold them in their house as long, and filling those little voids to make it easy, whether you're in an urban environment or if you're rural, you shouldn't have to drive 200 miles to fix a cat. How can each community bring that spay neuter to their community so that they can go ahead and fix the problem themselves?
And what does that look like in terms of expanding relationships and bringing in new people and meeting new people about this? How is that done? I know that you mentioned is social media. It's the power of social media, right?
It is. And what we really have tried to do, it gets cumbersome because, again, a lot of folks who, if they see that live in our neighborhood next door, I see people commenting that there's so many animal issues that aren't being addressed. There's no one-stop shop for education. That was something I learned when I first started our organization. I kind of secret shopped for a couple days, made phone calls trying to see where, and I was blown away at how hard it was. I've got a litter of kittens or I've got a cat I need to fix. Well, you can only get 3 vouchers from the city to fix them for free and you're going to wait a few months. And I'm like, oh my God, this is a job in itself. So I think the education on a community level, because each community is going to be a little bit different, and to kind of customize that and then to get neighbors, even if they're not out there trapping or fostering or adopting, to go ahead and get that message out into the community through social media or next door, some of the neighborhood groups are just knocking on a neighbor's door saying, there's a rescue that can fix your cats. Let's do it.
Yeah. And that kind of leads me into kind of what we were talking about before the call. And I want to have this conversation. It sparks the conversation where you mentioned, adopt, don't shop is great. And I think that's important to, I'm not really one to say it, but I want people to have that conversation in their head. But beyond that is that you brought up a great point. It's how do you eliminate the problem altogether, right? And I think it's instead of getting from point A to point B, let's eliminate starting at point A to begin with, and that's spay and neuter. So I really want you to talk about that. And I know that you mentioned maybe Gavin Newsom out here in California. He's the governor of California, for anyone who doesn't know, did something too. So I'd love to talk with you about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest things, here in Los Angeles, there was an injunction placed on the city just as they were 10 years ago, getting ready to start fixing cats. Very long story. You can Google it, find a lot of information. It has affected us. So the city couldn't really fund fixing strays. And, now that that's gone, a big hiccup is there still are not enough spay neuter clinics. So we've got to really look at this in terms of what is the cure. And I think COVID has made people focus a little bit more on problem solution. And when you look at adopt, don't shop and foster and all these other things, it's like, okay, but is that actually the cure? It does, once the animals are here, it's moving them out, but wait, how do we stop the presses? Where's our inventory control? And that's where spay neuter comes in. And the toughest thing that I'm learning is there's nowhere near enough resources. Waiting 4 months. The one clinic that we use that I love is Fix Nation, which is such a great name because that's truly, for every animal advocate, we need to become a Fix Nation. Certain times there's a 4 month wait just to get an appointment to fix a cat. The demand is so heavy. We need more vets who are versed in high volume spay neuter. It is a bit of a specialty, and they can fix many dogs and cats at a high rate. We need more vet techs. So there's all these little voids that need to be filled on a community level. And this is where I say, as a community, how can we come together? How can we get the funding to start ramping up some of these programs to get more RVTs and vets involved, open more free clinics so anybody can help someone fix an animal without having to, the fact that you're doing it for free as a volunteer, to have to pay to do it is asking a lot. I think it's the very least we can do is make sure that those services for a simple spay neuter are there for anyone that wants to help reduce the number of unwanted animals in our cities.
And I mean, and like you said, like just the size of your organization, I feel like a lot of these organizations they're bootstrapped. They're small. They're doing everything they can. And, there needs to be more awareness, more education, more vets. And from what you've seen in the years you've been doing this, is that something, do you think that that's been keeping up with the cat and dog population? Or do you think that's something that's kind of going the inverse? It's like an inverse relation. What do you think about that?
Yeah. And I think what's sad too, I mean, just to touch upon I think it really takes a critical eye because your heart goes out when you have when you have newborn kittens just everywhere and the shelters are full and they're having to clear the shelters, give them away for, everybody's begging and begging. You become kind of overwhelmed by it all. But when you start to break it down and you say to yourself, wait a minute, if rescue groups that just do adoptions are only pulling cats out of shelters, fixing them and getting them adopted, we can't pull them fast enough. We've tried that for years and the problem is still there. So you have to hit on both sides of the problem, which is, and again, where I go back to community, it makes more sense to get people in a local region involved, especially in big cities, whether it be regional fosters who are supporting those trappers, get regional spay neuter clinics up and running where people aren't having to sit in traffic for 5 hours to get a cat fixed or spending $300. Try to make the services a little bit more attainable for everybody in the community. And, I think you just get more people engaged. It's just like trash cleanup. You can't ask people to go clean up the trash in your neighborhood, but not give them trash bags. You know what I mean?
That makes perfect sense. Yeah. Like just have the supplies and what is necessary for people, setting people up to succeed with this and giving them the tools for success. That's awesome. I completely agree.
I think we, like I always say we, and we're a good example. You can look at our little team, and I mean, would I have started this had I known how many cats there were? Maybe not. There have been people who think that we're bragging about the number of cats we fixed. No, I'm broadcasting that because I look at our shelter numbers every month. I go on, it's public knowledge. I look at what's going into the shelter. Then I look and I'm saying, whoa, if we can find this many cats that need to either be rescued from the street or fixed, and there's that many going into the shelter, the problem is so much worse than any of us could imagine. So we thus be their voice, public, let's start rallying around funding for some more, good old services to support this, as opposed to just kind of pretending that it's not there.
Yeah. And I think that leads me into something I wanted to ask you is there anything, like, let's say someone is listening to this and they're incredibly passionate. They're like, I want to help with spay and neuter, whatever that may be, help with your organization. Where can someone help? Can someone help you directly, or maybe like, let's say they're not around LA area and they're outside. What can someone do tomorrow to start taking action on this cause?
I think the first thing is to start looking at your community. So many people don't look. Call your shelter, call a few veterinarians, especially if you're in a small town. Call your city officials. In many cities, the shelters are publicly funded. So instead of going and taking your old blankets, go in there and say, hey, what are we doing about spay and neuter? What are we doing to reduce the number of animals coming into the shelter? Not to move them out, but what are we doing to reduce the population so that so our rescues aren't as overwhelmed? Do we have enough vets? Could we rally a couple vets to fix a few extra cats on the weekend? This grassroots, get something off the ground. Call, one of the biggest things that I have become an advocate of is there are a million amazing organizations out there that are doing adoptions and all these different things. Find a little one that is doing the spay neuter, because I can guarantee you, like us, they are probably overwhelmed and they need fosters desperately. And you can be a conscious adopter. So in other words, like with my trappers, if we rescue a litter of kittens, you're going to see if we trapped the mom. Did we do due diligence? Did we fix the other cats so the breeding isn't happening? And you know where your kitten came from. It's kind of nice to know that you took an animal that didn't have to go to the shelter and you gave them a home. An animal that normally would have just been left out there to breed. So I think doing that kind of conscious work in your own community, no matter how big the city is, every city is little communities, and talk to your neighbors. Even if it's education. I know on Nextdoor, we've been seeing a lot of people. I'm so proud to see people who have learned and, thanks spay neuter for that stray. Oh, that cat isn't ear-tipped. That needs to be TNR'd. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy. People are thinking of that.
Yeah, that's amazing when that kind of conversation can happen in neighborhoods, right? Where it's just like everyone instantly knows. Just like if there's a problem, you call the cops, right? If it's like, oh, we see some cats that their ears aren't clipped. Hey, better call spay and neuter before this gets out of control and all these kittens are born. And, I think that's such an awesome, I don't hear that often, but I think that's cool that you're hearing those and seeing those conversations happen. And I think that's a wonderful sign of something to start. So
I just think it's something, I'm from Ohio originally, but I lived in New York. I learned to trap in Miami. I live in LA. wherever you live, you can, it's grassroots. You get your own. If you're an animal advocate, look at the problem, go ask the questions in your community, and again, look for where are the voids. And I think education is big. I think people really need to understand, that these catchphrases like adopt, don't shop, no kill, and all these other things, they're lovely, but at the end of the day, there are animals, the numbers are still way too high, and we all have to do something about it. If it's just sharing some information on a neighborhood forum so that your neighbors learn what to do when they find kittens, is, don't just take the kittens, fix that mama cat, you know what I mean? And those types of those actions will make a big difference. And anyone that's doing the trapping, the best thing everybody can do is advocate for a spay neuter clinic so they can get those kitties fixed as soon as they can and fix more and more and more.
I love it. And I think that's amazing advice. And what's on the books for you guys coming up in the next, year, 2 years? What are some things that you guys want to see happen, goals, stuff like that?
We need to make some big jumps. Now that the injunction has been overturned, LA, there are a lot of people trapping, solo, independent people who aren't collaborating the way our little team is. And it's really hard for some of them who are out there alone. So I want to work harder. We've partnered with Fix Nation on a number of different things, and I want to work harder to try to encourage neighborhoods here in LA to start banding together. We're working with some of the neighborhood councils right now and a mobile spay neuter organization called Spay for LA. And so we're trying to land that, get the neighborhood councils to pay for it, bring that into the community to just as a springboard to get people, okay, whose pets aren't fixed, what stray cats are there, and how can we start bringing this into the neighborhood, to at least plant a seed. And that's what I would like to see happen. We're going to keep trapping because, shockingly enough, we have a lot of work still to do here in our neighborhood. There's still a lot of cats we have to trap, but I want to try to work on that and get more neighborhoods in LA involved and show them that they could do it, even if it's 2 or 3 people coming together. It's a start.
Yes, it is. I think that's awesome. And lastly, I want to ask, where can people find you, follow your cause, see the progress, just everything you guys got going on, whether you're an individual or an organization? Where can we find you at?
Well, our website is savekittensla.org. Why is it Save Kittens and not Luxe Paws? Because basically every spay neuter is saving kittens. Every cat we fix, we're saving dozens of kittens. So the impact is so great. And I always say to people, let's stop crying over these poor babies that are out there suffering and dying and go do something about it. Make an impact. So go to savekittensla.org. Our Instagram, we're very reality based. Some people are about all the fluff, and we do have a lot of fluff. But, I think people are smart. I respect the public, and I want to give them a reality. It's not always good, but at least they can see what we are dealing with on a daily basis, the reality, so that they can make a choice to start making some change happen, because everything isn't good out there, but it could be a lot better.
Yeah. And I think that's awesome that you guys are sharing, just giving people the real story, because, and sometimes it's hard, but that's honestly the type of stuff that sometimes motivates me to get out there and just do, like just this podcast and talking with people like you that are making real life sacrifices. Just those are the types of people that will really carry this cause. And so thank you so much for coming on and sharing what your organization does. And all the links to everything you mentioned will be in the description below, wherever you're listening at, check them out.
Thank you for having me. And thank you very much for talking about trap, neuter, return, and spay neuter. And Get behind it. It's such a great cause. It's a good thing. And it brings people together. It's hard, but it brings people together through that work. So thank you.
Thank you.